Well, good evening to all, and welcome to another episode of Fabulously Creepy Stories. I am your curator of stories, your teller of tales, your bard, your fabulist. I am Archibald, and tonight we have quite the creepy stories to tell. Thank you for showing up tonight. I know it wasn't easy. It took a lot of courage for you to show up, but I thank you. Tonight, we're going to start our tale with a story that was shared to us by Shahid in our Discord channel. Thank you very much, Shahid, for bringing these tales to our attention. These were obtained from Reddit, the Self No Sleep thread. Our first story from the night is My Wife Went Back to Her Country. Someone Else Came Back. Written by Hey Young. Oh, I see you're scared, Star King. Do not worry. We're all here to be scared with you. And it's such a shame, little DJ girl. Perhaps you'll be back in time for a second story. Who knows? Ah, hello, Shaolin. Welcome to the stream. You are just in time for our first story. So let's begin. My wife got the call at 2 a.m. In the span of a minute, I watched her face change from confused to concerned to deeply upset. She hung up the phone and sighed, and a little bit of her soul seemed to escape with her breath. My mother died, she said. Her voice was flat, resigned. I put my hand on her shoulder. I'm so sorry, honey, I said. She simply shook her head and slid off the bed. I need to go back to Romania, she said, for just a week or two, for the funeral and to solve some family matters. My curiosity was piqued, but I didn't dare ask. My wife has always been very private about her family, and she gets upset when asked too closely about it. I've always tried to respect her space on this. This time was no exception. I simply kissed her on the forehead and lay back in bed, watching the back of her head as she booked next day airline tickets, silently resigning myself to a week of sitting on the couch, eating Chinese takeout, and watching old office reruns. She flew out the following evening, and returned a week and a half later. Only when I picked her up at the airport, it wasn't her. I couldn't explain the dread that filled my body as the woman approached me, smiling. She looked exactly like my wife, but there was some indefinable quality that was not the same. She hugged me, and my body went stiff. She held me at arm's length, beaming joy, but her eyes were cold. Is everything okay, honey? She asked. I nodded. My stomach sank when I spotted the difference. My wife has a small birthmark on her cheek, a beauty mark. But this woman's cheek was bare. What happened to your birthmark? I asked, as nonchalantly as I could. Oh, the woman said, you noticed. My great aunt gave me something to get rid of it. Some sort of secret recipe that burned like hell. She wouldn't tell me what was in it, but it worked like a charm. She smiled, but her eyes were searching, seeing if I believed her. Beginning to doubt myself, I smiled back. When we got home, I went straight for the beer and settled my nerves. I saw a bowl of strawberries, and it gave me an idea. Hey, honey, I called out. We've got some strawberries left over. Want some? Sure, she said, walking into the kitchen. I handed her the bowl. As she bit the end of a strawberry, she winked at me. Chills ran down my spine. My wife was definitely allergic to strawberries. The only reason they were in the house at all was that I had forgotten to throw them out before I picked her up at the airport. Is everything okay? She asked. Her eyes roved up and down my face. Fine, I said, forcing a smile. I just missed you was all. Aw, she said, and planted a kiss on my forehead. I didn't know what to do. Luckily, my phone rang just then, and I used that as an out. I'm expecting a call from work, I lied, ducking into the other room to take the call. Honey? Said the voice on the other end. I recognized it immediately as the voice of my wife. Hey, I said breathlessly. You won't believe what's going on. I know what's going on, said my wife. Just listen. You need to get out of the house. Okay, I said. I will. I hung up the phone. When I turned around, my fake wife was standing in the doorway staring at me. Is everything okay, honey? She asked. My heart was pounding in my throat as I answered. It's fine, I lied. Work emergency. I got to go. Okay, honey, she said. Hurry back. She winked and licked her lips, but her eyes looked so cold and filled with something that looked like hunger. I quickly got out of there. On my way to the driveway, my phone rang once again. Did you get out of the house? My wife asked, as soon as I picked up the phone. Yes, I said, I did. Can you please tell me what's going on? I will, in time, said my wife. Just don't go back to the house until I call you and tell you it's okay. Check into a hotel. Before I could protest, the line clicked dead. When I tried to call back, I got a notice on the line that had been disconnected. I called in sick for work, and I slept in the hotel for 3 days before I got a phone call from my wife. It's safe, she said. You can come home now. She hung up before I answered. When I got there, my wife was waiting for me at the doorway. As soon as I saw her, my heart flooded with joy. I jumped out of the car and ran to embrace her. I held her face in my hands and examined it, just to be sure. It was my wife, all right. The birthmark was there and everything. After that, I let her bury her face in my chest. We stood there hugging for an eternity that was far too short before she broke away. Come on inside, she said. I'll make you a drink and explain everything. My wife mixed my whiskey and Coke strong, just how I liked it. And I downed it greedily as she sat down across from me. As I was setting the glass down, I noticed a smudge on my shirt. It was greasy, like one of my wife's makeup pens. 3 realizations hit me at once. The drink tasted funny. The room was spinning, and my wife's birthmark had rubbed off. And that is the end of that tale. It seems the man had a happy reunion with his wife when she got back. Perhaps. Oh, Star King, I see that you are filled with the terror of the story, and thank you, Shaolin, for the ice cream cone. It is very much appreciated, especially in this hot room. I think I put far too many logs in that fire back there. Now, this next tale is quite the long one. In fact, we might even need to take a short break in the middle of it. This one is also from Reddit, courtesy from Shahid. Thank you for telling me this tale, Shahid. It is from the same Reddit post, Self No Sleep. It is called Time Travel is Not What You Think It's Like. Written by Flard. And so our tale begins. My name is Clark. I am one of 3 people who can truthfully say they have time traveled. It is not what you think it's like. It is not really certain how they selected us. I was working on my bachelor's degree at my state university when I was approached by the team. Project BTA OW33 is what they called it. No cool name like Project X or Project Alpha Time Warp or something along those lines. Just BTA OW33, whatever that means. They approached me and asked if I'd like to take part in an experiment in exchange for my tuition being paid for. I only had a year left in school, but those 2 semesters were going to cost me $32,000. Seems fairly cheap compared to what I'm paying. So, Of course I said yes. When I asked what the experiment was, they told me it was extremely secretive. I would be finding out details the day of, then I could decide to back out if I didn't want to participate. About 6 weeks went by and I was basically on call to be ready to go whenever they needed me. Finally, I got the call. I live in Atlanta, and the team had the 3 of us meet up in a parking deck about 20 minutes outside the city. Once there, we all got in one of those short school buses, and they took us out to the northern Georgia mountains. It was about a 2-hour drive, and we didn't really get much time to get to know each other. We were under strict rules not to reveal information about ourselves or talk to each other on the bus ride over. The last couple of miles were on the rocky dirt road leading down the mountain. The bus parked in a small, maybe half-acre stretch of grass. The grass was freshly mowed, and I could tell by the sight and smell. The alcove of glass was enclosed by large trees from the surrounding forest. "All right," a man stood up from his seat at the front of the bus. "We're here. I'll brief you all once we get inside the house." As we got off the bus, one by one, we could see that the center of the clearing was a building. It had one very large window on one side, basically encompassing the entire wall. Every other wall was black from the outside, and I could see through the window that was inside was painted white. There was a large, silver, metal ring that surrounded the house. It came about 3 inches off the freshly mowed grass, was a foot wide, and had lights coming from drilled holes all the way around it. "Watch your step, and please do not step on the tall top of the ring," the same man said. "Once we get inside, just go ahead and take a seat." We all stepped over the ring and made our way into the house. The house, as the man called it, was made up of only one room. Inside, there were 4 chairs around a rather large circular table. The chairs, table, walls, and one large lamp were all white. The only thing that wasn't white in the room were a pair of bookshelves against the wall, both empty. After we all took our seats, the man introduced himself. "Alrighty, welcome. My name is Dr. Olson. I'm glad you all decided to take part in this. To take part in history. We were told you, as we told you all, this is extremely sensitive information. After my explanation of what this experiment consists of, I'll ask you if you want to continue. Understand?" "What if we don't want to continue?" the woman said, about my age with fairy red hair. "Then we know this super top secret information, right? And you're going to let us walk out of here?" The man gave a smile. He knew this would be asked. "Yes, you are free to leave here knowing what the experiment consists of. However, the university and I are confident of 3 things. 1, you won't want to leave. 2, the university's attorneys are rather powerful, and you already signed the NDAs. And 3, no one will believe you if you told them." Quite interesting. I would love to know what the secret is. "Well, Star King, you never time traveled? Just Marty McFly." "Well, don't forget, Doc and Biff are also time travelers." Silence filled the room. The redhead slouched back in the chair, non-verbal. "Well, go on then." "The experiment," Dr. Olson continued, "is time travel." I smiled, but wasn't sure why. The others seemed to snort a little in amusement. The tension in the room seemed to release. Now, I know it sounds, crazy. I've heard it all before. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to just sit in this room, observe, and tell me what happens." We all nodded in agreement. A couple of okays filled the air. The doctor carried on. "All right. This is how it'll work. I'm going to drive up to this control center. It's just about 5 minutes up the mountain. I have a couple of colleagues there as well. From there, I will flip a switch in layman's terms. When Dr. Olson began his next sentence, he leaned forward and his face took on a very stern, angry, fatherly quality. Do not leave this room. After I walk out, do not leave. Do not leave until I come back down the mountain. Walk back inside this room and tell you that you can leave. I have done this experiment before, but not on humans. I know it works. I know it's safe. I can promise you this is safe. I cannot promise your safety, though, if you leave the house. I remember the air shifting to an uneasy feel. Are you sure this is safe? What if this test is on? What have you tested this on? What's it gonna feel like? A scrawny blonde guy said, who couldn't have been older than 21. The doctor continued, I know it's safe. No animal I have used this on has been affected. I've used rats and progressed up to dogs. No bruises, no cuts, no change in behavior. And to be honest with you all, I don't know what you should expect. I'm not sure if it feels like a tingle, a sting, a pinch, or anything else. This is the first human trial, which is why you need to pay attention to any sensations you feel. Wait, okay, if we are actually about to time travel, where or when are we traveling to? I asked. You will be launching 3 hours into the future. Once activated at the control site, this building will disappear. My team and I will be on standby for 3 hours. Then, poof, the house is back, with all of you in it. 3 hours into the future. A long silence followed. I'm skeptic of just anything about now, but something about Dr. Olson's tone, his body language, the way he was explaining it, it was hard for me to doubt. He was dead serious. When it was clear there were no more questions, Dr. Olson looked at his watch, stood up, and cleared his throat. Alrighty then. It's 1:22 p.m. right now, so by the time I make it to the control center, it should be just before 1:30. Warm-up only takes about 2 minutes, so we'll mark your project arrival time at around 4:30. Are there any other questions or concerns? No one spoke. Okay, I'll see you all in 3 hours, or from your perspective, just a couple of minutes. The doctor winked, nodded, and closed the door behind them after adding, safe travels. The three of us stood from our chairs as we watched the doctor drive off. Then we all turned to one another, the tension, yet again, easing. Well, he sure knows how to make an entrance and an exit, the redhead said. No kidding, the blonde kid answered. Well, nice to meet you, fellow time travelers. We all chuckled a bit, that nervous sort of laughter. My name's Ryan. I'm Clark, I replied back with a handshake to follow. Emma, said the woman, with a smile that could make a man or woman's head turn. We exchanged pleasantries, talked about our school and how we were selected. Emma was the first to ask what we were all thinking. So, what's the chance this is legit? Don't get me wrong, I would love to be the world's first time traveler. But I feel like this is going to end up a dud. Are we all just being pranked? Yeah, Ryan replied. When he was explaining everything, I thought it may be a prank, like this may be an actual experiment from the university, but it's an experiment to see if they can convince people that they time travel. That's meta, I quipped. Oh, guys, look! Emma was staring at the large window. The ring that surrounded the building was slowly getting brighter. It looked like 100 laser pointers slowly brightening, shining up into the overcast sky. Does this mean we're in a 2-minute warm-up? I said, already knowing the answer. I guess so, Emma started. God, my heart is racing. Mine too. Same. We all stood, perfectly still, watching those skinny beams of light growing brighter, until it was nearly blinding. I turned to look at Emma. Her pupils were closing to the size of pencil tips, maybe smaller. Her gaze, along with Ryan's, was locked on the beams. I could see their faces getting more illuminated, each second that passed. Second after second, it just kept getting brighter. brighter and brighter and brighter, until it was like we were being engulfed by the sun. And in less than a second, it was dark. I chose my words carefully. Less than a second. It was not like turning off a light. It was not like shutting your eyes. It was faster. In an instant. I saw Emma's pupils quickly grow large, as the absence of lights from the windows met her retina. The inside of the house was still illuminated, thanks to one lamp in the main room. Outside the window was nothing. Not nighttime. Not black. Not pitch black. Nothing. It almost had a color to it, but one I cannot explain. It gave off no light. It was the color that a blind man sees. It was the color of our sleeping nights, in between dreams. It was the color of death. It was nothing. We all kind of looked around for about a minute of silence, all staring at the same window into the void of absence. "What the F is happening?" Emma said in a shaky voice. I don't, I began. My heart stopped beating, Ryan said bluntly. I saw Emma raise 2 fingers to her neck. I didn't have to. I could feel it. It was one of the first things I've noticed. When I was staring at Emma's pupils as the light reached its crescendo, my heart was racing, and as soon as the light disappeared, so did the rhythm thumps of my heart. "What the F is happening?" Emma began to panic. Wait, this is just part of it," Ryan started. I'm really freaked out too, trust me, obviously. Something is happening. If you believe the doctor, which I'm starting to, we may be, traveling through time." I actually agreed with him. Yeah, you're right. We just need to pay attention to this so we can explain it later. Okay, heartbeat stopped. Checked. We're still alive. Check. And that void, abyss thing. Check. We turned to the window in unison. "I don't like looking at it," Emma said. "It's unnatural. I don't know, not supposed to be. It's not black, but it has no light. I don't think..." She wasn't wrong. I'm kind of glad I don't have a heartbeat right now because I think I'd have a heart attack, I joked, anxious. Laughter filled the small space. We finally moved from our spots where we were staring out the window. It was a relief to move around the room, but I'm not sure why. We were quiet for a couple of minutes. Emma was sitting in her chair with her knees tucked up to her chest, occasionally checking her non-existent pulse, or looking at her hands. Ryan leaned against the back of the wall, staring out the window. I pulled up a chair next to Emma and joined her in her quiet atmosphere. Our peaceful still was broken by Orion's words. "Clark! Emma! There's something out there." We looked at him, then out the window. "What do you mean?" Emma asked. "Out there. I can see things. Your mind is playing tricks on you, like when you look into a pitch black room. Your mind will make up things it sees in the light, or shapes of stuff," I said. "No," he countered. "It's there. Look out there. You can see it, huh? I don't know how to describe it. Just look." Em and I both turned our attention once again to the emptiness. It was still. It was quiet. It was unmoving, abnormal. Yet it felt like it was meant to be there. Like it was at home, and we were its intruders. "I don't see anything," Emma said. "Me neither." Ryan continued to stare out, unflinching. Emma and I stared at the table, fiddling with our fingers and nervously finger-tapping. I'm not sure how much time has passed before the silence was broken. All I know is it felt like a long time, maybe an hour, maybe 2. "Well, this is taking quite some time, isn't it?" Emma said. "Seriously, I feel like I've been here for a couple of hours," I responded. "No," Ryan said. "Not even a second has passed." Emma and I glanced looks of confusion at each other. What do you mean? Not even a second has passed, he repeated. His gaze was still locked in the void. Time doesn't pass in here. When you look into it, you see. No time has passed. No time will pass. When you look into it, it all makes sense. Emma and I locked eyes once again, yet this time it was less confusion and more terror. I spoke up. Come on, man, stop messing with us. He did not reply. He did not blink. Days passed, I think. Emma and I sat and talked a lot. We did not grow hungry, tired, or thirsty. We did not have to use the bathroom. We came to a few realizations. One was that there was no temperature in the room. It was an absence of any heat or coolness. Air was non-existent. After roughly 12 hours or so, we estimated, our bodies began to not breathe automatically. We didn't need oxygen. The other realization was about the void. Ryan had been staring off into it for the entirety of our stay, save for the first couple of minutes. He has not moved. He has not blinked. Sometimes he mumbles something about time or the universe, but most of it is gibberish. Emma and I decided to maybe there's something that is out there. We can't see it, but Ryan can, and it's driving him insane. We decided it's best not to look at it for too long. After weeks of being stuck in this room, Emma and I decided we're growing increasingly restless. We started arguing about little things, and eventually stopped talking altogether. Sometimes I would hear her sob, trying to be quiet. I spent a lot of my time crying as well. No tears came out though. Emma and I ignoring each other was halted one day after Ryan simply stated, loud and clear, "I'm going out." It was the first time Emma and I had even looked at each other in a couple of days. It was the first Ryan had spoken coherent words in weeks. He did not look at us when he said it, and for some reason, neither of us protested. Maybe out of boredom, depression, or curiosity, we did not stop him. He walked over to the glass door and stood for a moment, never taking his eyes off the emptiness. He spoke to us, still facing the nothingness. "I'm going to learn its secrets, its power. I will become a god, and it welcomes me." He opened the door, reached his hand out into the void. It looked like an optical illusion. Exactly where the door frame was, or as soon as he broke through that plane, his hand disappeared. All I could see was his wrist, with nothing attached. He brought his arms back inside the room. His hand was missing. There was exposed bone, flesh, and tissue, but he did not bleed. He did not scream. He smiled. He then walked into the void, looking like a ghost walking through a wall. Emma and I stared in horror. She ran over to me and we cried together for a while. She said 7 words to me, through thick sobs, that chilled me to the bone. The first real sensation I've had since coming here. Are we going to be here forever? And that is part 1 of our story. I hope you are enjoying it. I know I am. Oh, Star King is gasping at the creepiness of this fabulous tale. Azarus, welcome to the stream. Thank you for showing up. Azarus says, is it just me, or does it feel like he's in a hobbit hole from the background? I can guarantee you I do not live in a hobbit hole. No, Star King, I may not be. If only a group of singing dwarves were to show up, that would interrupt my storytelling, but in a fabulous way, wouldn't it? Far over the misty mountains, cold to dungeons deep in caverns old. Best comment ever. I am so glad you are all enjoying this story. And I see Shaolin is currently in the lead with the Leno donations. Thank you, Shaolin. Now, enough of the interruptions, let's get on to part 2. Emma and I spent a lot of time crying. What else was there to do? Imagine it. You are stuck in a room with nothing to do but stack chairs or topple over empty bookcases in frustration. We tried to have sex. It was just another thing to do to pass the time, but with no blood pumping through our veins, it made things difficult. We played all the name games, invisible tic-tac-toe, tongue twisters, etc. We can't exactly play I Spy because our options for colors were either white or voidish. Sometimes we tried to sleep to no avail. We just lie there, occasionally together, sometimes apart. Eyes closed with no rhythm rise or fall of our chest, no soft sound of a heartbeat, just utter silence. I didn't think I'd ever make it out. I'm not sure of the total time I spent in there. It was hard to tell and grew even more difficult as time went on. At first it was easy. I could tell a couple of seconds had passed. 10 minutes grew to hours, but especially after Ryan left, it was difficult. There was no rising sun. There was no moonlit sky with the glittering stars. There was no feeling tired, no sleepless or droopy feeling that settled in after the long day. I felt as if my internal clock was reworked itself to be, well, broken. Emma and I were starting to really lose it, but not in the same way Ryan did. To curb our sad days, we played pretend, like we were kids. I'm not sure if this was an actual decision on our part, or if our minds were making us do things in return for a flake of sanity. Sometimes one of us would be a waiter, and the other would be eating at a fancy restaurant. Sometimes we play doctor, and one person would have to undress to be examined. In some scenarios, she'd be my wife. I'd come home from a long day at work, and she'd have dinner prepared for me. She'd call the kids down, and we'd pretend to eat, and I would tell her about my day while sneaking table scraps to our dog. Our favorite scenario was strangers. At least that's what I called it, looking back. We didn't have a name for it then. I'd be sitting at a table, pretending I was at a bar at a club. She'd walk over and grab a seat, and I'd give her a couple of glances and side eyes before telling the bartender I'd buy her a drink. She would try to contain her glowing smile and would bat her eyelashes at me. Then she'd make her way from across the table, across the bar, and take the chair next to mine. I'd ask her name, and then we'd slowly go from surface level conversation into a world of getting to know each other deeper. Childhood memories, fears, aspirations, secrets, dreams. Then eventually one of us would break character and we'd laugh. We would also write plays in our head for each other to perform them. Or we'd make scripts for TV shows or movies and act them out. Mostly improv. Those were the good moments, the secure ones. Those escapes for us were equal to the escapes of regular people in the real world, who were watching TV or scrolling through an app so they don't have to face the reality that engulfs them. But at some point, reality always sets in. Our entire world was in that room. I started to forget what my mother's face looked like. I started to forget what my face looked like. One day, or night, or whatever, I looked off into the void. Emma and I treated it like somebody or someone would treat a naked homeless man screaming at them. It's best not to look for it too long, but it's okay to glance or catch it in your peripherals. I stared off into it, wondering about its color, its absence. I wondered where we were, physically. Were we somehow in another dimension? Were we being observed now? As I stared off, I saw something. I know I did. It was impossible to miss. Like a brush stroke on the blank canvas. Yes, it was there. It was something that existed in the vast emptiness of nothing. A tree? It was a tree. A perfectly symmetrical pine tree. almost like those abstract ink blot tests used for psychiatric evaluations. It was just like that, sitting dead center in my vision. It wasn't like spotting a tree from inside the window in the real world, no. I wasn't there with the tree. I was merely observing it. I felt like an alien from another planet witnessing it. The tree didn't know I was there, and I didn't know where it was. Suddenly, a strong and swift open palm made contact with my cheek, and I heard Emma yell, "Snap the F out of it, Clark, please!" Ah! My face stung, but the pain was dulled as I noticed she was crying. Whoa, hey, what's wrong? Oh God, you're really back. You're really back, thank God, she said through quivering lips. You were just staring out there for effing days. I couldn't do anything to snap you out of it. Days? Yes, God. I would cover your eyes and shake you, but nothing was working, so... She kept talking, but her voice sounded like it was falling down a well, as my own thoughts took over my attention. Days. I looked outside for 10 seconds, 20 tops. There was no way days had gone by. I told her this. What? She said. Are you effing around? You stood there. Right there. Still like a statue. So long. I was screaming. I was shaking you. I was pleading with you. I swear I'm telling the truth. I grabbed her hands consolingly. All I remember is seeing something out there. Then I don't. I don't know what happened. What did you see? Her crying was subsided a little, and her sadness was replaced by curiosity. I think it was a tree. A tree? Yeah, well, kind of. It had like a motion to it. Like it was growing, not from the ground, not like a normal tree, but it was spreading, I guess. Like when you take a netting off a Christmas tree and its branches fall and the tree looks fuller. It was just like that, but constantly expanding like an optical illusion. She looked at me as if I told her I had cancer, an expression of sympathy tangled with worry. She let out a heavy breath. I was so worried you were going to leave like he did. I hugged her and scratched the top of her head in an attempt to comfort her. Then she grabbed my neck and kissed me lightly. It wasn't the first time we kissed. We had plenty of times before. I don't know how it started. Can't even remember our first one. It was too long ago. But every so often we just look at each other and kiss. Was it a relationship or boredom? I know everything about her, it seemed. But I don't know. I was stuck there with her. What else were we going to do? Would we have gotten along on the outside, in the real world? If this experiment worked, would we be together? I don't know. A lot of time has passed since Emma slapped me and snapped me out of it. We were more quiet than usual, more thoughtful because of the events that had occurred. She brought it up first, interrupting our previous conversation. So, hey, let's say we make it out here. Whether that be in a million years, a billion, or whatever. Uh-huh. Well, you know how you were looking out the window? The days passed in a couple of seconds? What if that's the best thing to do? To pass those years. Maybe we just looked out. It'll feel like a couple hours and then boom, we're back to reality. I had wondered about it too. What if we never snapped out of it though? What if we walked out like Ryan did? Or what if we just stuck in here forever, hypnotized? I know, she said. I've thought about that, sure, but what? But, I don't know. What's our other option? Realistically. We can't keep living like this. We can't keep spending every day going through the waves of talking in silence and laughter and crying. I'm losing my effing mind and I know you are too. I tightened my lips together, and my silence answered her, so she continued. What's worse? Spending 1 trillion years in this room until you pull your hair out and slowly slip down the insanity slide, or looking at that abyss of nothing. And yeah, there's a chance we'll go off our rocks like Ryan and hypnotically walk out the door. But is it worth it? I think so. We had spent too much time in there. I don't know how long, but it felt like multiple lifetimes. If this ended in death, I welcomed it. And I know we had to do it. It was our only option. Okay, we'll barricade the door, I proposed. We'll put the table, the bookshelves, and everything else in front of it. There's at least one line of defense against us leaving. Yeah, it's no guarantee, but I like the idea. And we did just that. The idea that we could be out there for a couple hours was only motivation we needed. After the furniture was moved, we sat on the floor in the middle of the room. Our legs crossed and we faced each other. I'm terrified, she said openly. I know. I am too. What if we never see each other again? What if we never see anyone again? What if this is it? Like, it. I grabbed her hand and pulled her a little closer before replying. No matter what happens, I'm grateful that I had you here with me. I couldn't have been here alone. This place is hell. Well, it would have been much worse without you. She gave me a nod and smiled. I returned the same gesture. We both adjusted our bodies, still in the sitting position, to face the window. I looked to my right and admired Emma's gaze out the window, just as I did when we were transported here. I squeezed her hand, ready to spend an eternity together. She said with a shaken breath, almost laughing, "You know it." And with that, we peered into the nothingness. We are going to take one more short break before we finish this story. We are almost there, just 1/3 left to go. Amberger, welcome to the stream. I hope you're enjoying the fabulously creepy stories we have tonight. And let's see what we have missed here. Oh, thank you for another ice cream cone, Shaolin. It is very much appreciated. I do quite wish I had an ice cream cone right now. Now, without further ado, let us finish this fabulous tale. It's hard to describe what I saw. The first thing I saw in the vacuum of the void was once again the tree. It moved and breathed and acted like it had before. After a while, I noticed I couldn't see the walls in the room anymore. It was as if I was enveloped in the darkness. Like I was a lone astronaut without any planets or stars for guidance. I couldn't feel my butt against the floor anymore, nor Emma's hand gripping mine. In fact, I couldn't really feel anything. It was like I was slowly losing each of my senses. That horrifying nothing color slowly dissipated, and the tree did as well. The best way I could describe what came next is by comparing it to something you have all seen. If you close your eyes, you still see some light. You see the shapes and objects and other things your brain tells you to see. If you stare at a wall, a blank wall, there's almost a movement to it, a static-like sensation on the wall that you've never really noticed until you focus. That's what came next. As the nothing disappeared, I could see these shapes in the darkness. Random patterns, stars, and static filled my vision. I felt like I was falling. The randomness of the shapes took into my most nostalgic memories, things I didn't even know I remembered from the trenches of my mind. I felt this itch almost. I swear in those moments I didn't have a body, didn't have eyes, yet I could see. I felt like someone moved my still active brain into a jar to keep me alive. And that's what I was experiencing. Just my brain, doing its thing with no outputs or inputs. I felt like prickling, but I wasn't sure if I felt it. I existed, but not in a physical sense. I thought I was dead. I hope that's not what being dead is like. And then, faster than a light switch, but no sound effect, no transition of any kind. Pop! I was back, standing in that room. Sunshine made its way through the overcast sky and immediately flooded the windows. I was not facing the window though. I was facing Emma, with Ryan right behind her. Both of them were looking out the window, just as before everything went dark. My focus was on Emma's pupils, just as it was before, and it did not change in size. Before I could begin to process what was happening, Ryan screamed louder than I thought physically possible. I jumped and started to back away, but Emma didn't even flinch. Ryan grabbed the lamp from the table and smashed it to the ground, picked up a large piece of glass and pushed it through his chest and into his heart. His hands were bleeding and his chest was discharging blood by the pint. He died within a minute. He was smiling the whole time. Emma, still unmoved, kept staring out the window. I was just trying to process my thoughts, which were abundant. Ryan stabbed himself is the least of my concerns, to be honest with you. I backed up against the window opposite of Ryan and slumped until I hit the floor. I sat on the fetal position and was praying the doctor would come down the mountain. Their experiment had worked, kind of. The room did disappear, and we reappeared exactly 3 hours into the future. Dr. Olson said he installed the window in case we could see lights or flashes. He did not know about the void. After Ryan's death, the university shut down Project BTA-OW32 pretty quickly, but I doubt that was the last the world would see of it. Dr. Olson could only hear the events that took place from my perspective. Emma was in a catatonic state. She hasn't spoken a word or made noise since returning. She's completely unresponsive. There is no sign of her getting better. I visited her once at the home she lives in now, and I'm never going back. She stares off at the walls the same way Ryan stared into the void. If there's a God out there, I just pray she isn't still there somehow. And in that place, I hope her mind is free or at peace. Why am I not catatonic? Why did I make it okay? Did I see the same thing Ryan saw? I'm not sure. I try not to think about it. I have lived subjectively longer than anyone will ever have to experience, to suffer. I don't have the guts to kill myself though. I think about it often. I don't really care if I get in trouble with the law by sharing the story. It's therapeutic to share. And like Dr. Olson said from the beginning, no one will believe me anyway. Day to day, life doesn't bother me. I don't mind interacting with people. I like eating food again and taking a nice hot shower. I like knowing I can die, that I will die. It's not like waking moments that disturb me, no. It's when I sleep. My dreams are awful and are almost always of that place, that room. The doctor says it's because that room is where my brain thinks it has spent most of its life. It says they will lessen as my stimuli from the real world increases. But dreaming isn't the worst part about sleeping. It's every other moment between the dreams. As I slip away into oblivion, so does my body, and so does my senses. My mind is still active, but I am encompassed by the void, drowning in its emptiness. That color, that nothing. Every night, it haunts me. I hope to God you never see it, never realize it's there, because when you do, it won't go away. And that is the end of that tale. I hope you all had a very fabulously chilling experience with that. And seeing as how we still have plenty of time for more chills, I did have a third story I was saving just in case. But I think we have plenty of time for it right now. It is a short story. I was planning on reading this last week, but we did run out of time. And I'll get to it once I find it. Ah, here it is. This one is from the Creepy Pasta. It is another long story. This story is called My Grandmother Was Murdered for Tea Set. I want to go to the Zealots. It was a tradition. Ever since my grandmother's vision got too bad for her to drive, every Sunday I'd take her downtown for whatever shopping she needed to get done. We'd have been doing it for years, but for whatever reason, when she picked up the phone each Sunday, she acted like my call was a total surprise. Oh, how nice to hear from you. No, I don't really need anything. Well, if you're going anyway. I don't know why she acted like this, but she did. Until about a month ago, anyway. I called her like usual, and she barely even waited for me to finish saying hello before she told me she wanted to go to the Zealots. Sure, Grandma. What's Zealots? Doris went last weekend, and she's been cooing about it ever since. She was out with her granddaughter, her great-granddaughter, and brought her some sort of doll that she's just in love with. Madison, I mean, though Doris is in love with it, too, but Madison is the one that bought it. Doris says that the whole shop was like a treasure, and honestly, I'm sick of hearing about it. I got to go. Then let's go see it, Grandma. Do you know where it is? No, but we can ask Doris when she gets here. I'll just look it up online, Grandma. There was no such thing as a short conversation with Doris, and if we were half as enamored with the shop as my grandmother seemed to think it was, then if we stopped to talk to her about it, we'd be there for at least an hour. I intended to avoid Doris completely until the trip home, at least, where I could fake another commitment to flee if I had to. She was a sweet lady, but loved to talk. The retirement home, independent living community, was full of women like that. You'd think that they could just talk to each other and spare everyone else, but apparently that didn't work. Zealots turned out to be down in the old warehouse district, which was a previously cheap floor space for all sorts of businesses from breweries to rug wholesalers. It didn't have a website, but a couple of local reviews described it as a charming collection of oddities and a delightful maze of vintage treasures, which told me about what to expect from the place. Nearly anywhere, the first thing I noticed when we walked into it was that it was enormous. Tall shelves divided the cavernous space into winding aisles, intersecting and ending apparently at random. If there was a plan to the layout, I couldn't see it. Grandma was delighted from the moment we walked in. "Oh, look at what we have here," she explained, making a beeline for one aisle end cap. She picked up a china figurine of an angel and showed it to me. Isn't it adorable? I've never really been one for quiche, but I smiled. It really is, Grandma. She replaced the fragile statue and drifted down the aisle. I followed in her wake, nodding appreciatively and making noises of approval, approbation, and for each item she has held for my appraisal. I didn't really get it, but I hadn't seen her this animated in years, so I was loving it. We'd been there for an hour or more before she found the tea set. "Oh, look at this," she declared. Her tone was different than it had been before. A little bit lower, more possessive maybe. It was enough to sharpen my attention, certainly, and to pull me from the fog of yeast and that I have been uttering. So I looked at her. She seemed demanding. It was, as I said, a tea set, a delicate one of bone china, with intricate patterns of vines and flowers twirling around the rims of the cups and bowls. It was certainly a marvel of craftsmanship, and lovely as far as these things go. But it was a tea set, The sort of thing you put in your cupboard and ignored for years on end. Grandma felt differently, clearly. She approached it with almost reverent look in her face, plucking the cup from its stand with a sort of care usually reserved for handling newborn kittens. "Oh, this is beautiful," she breathed, turning it over in her hands. She turned to me. "Will you carry this up to the front for me?" I blinked. I've never known my grandma to make such an impulse purchase in her life. I'd seen her dither for 5 minutes over what brand of canned green beans to buy. I knew that she was on a fixed income, and that this was a full tea set with cups, saucers, servers, and all. "Are you sure, Grandma?" I asked, leaving an unspoken last part. Are you sure you could afford this?" I would have offered to buy it for her, but honestly, I wasn't sure I could afford it either. I figured that this set like this would have been a few $100 minimum, more if it had any sort of vintage value. She nodded in answer to a question that I hadn't quite asked. "Look, they're practically giving it away." She held up a small handwritten tag affixed to the teapot that read only $25. "Maybe this is just for the—" I began, but she was already turning the tag over. On the reverse of the same handwriting was, "For Sept." "Wow," I said, impressed. "Shoot, let's get two." Grandma gave me a bit of a glare. "This is clearly one of a kind." I shut up before I said anything else stupid. We made our way to the front of the store. Grandma was still examining various items on shelves, me staring intently on the clinking, teetering machinery in her arms to make sure that nothing slipped. When we finally reached the front, a set of the whole collection down with relief. "Oh, a lovely choice," said the uncourteous little man behind the counter. "That was absolutely one of my favorite finds." Grandma smiled. "You have a beautiful store here, mister." "Oh, call me Thaddeus. And thank you. I just had such a love of collecting. If I didn't run the store, I'm sure I'd be one of those hoarders that make television shows about these days." "This is not hoarding. Your collection is wonderful. And this," Grandma indicated the tea set. "Well, I'm glad you found it. Shall I wrap it up?" He reached for the teapot. His motions were as smooth as his voice, almost unnaturally so. Have you ever watched a movie shot at 48 frames per second? Instead of the standard 24. It's too smooth, too clean. It ends up looking sort of uncanny. That was how Thaddeus moved and spoke, like he had more frames than the rest of us. When he reached for the teapot, my grandmother flinched. I saw her start to reach out as well, then restrain herself. Yes, please do," she said, a hint of strain in her voice. "We certainly wouldn't want anything to happen to it." "Oh, bone china is very durable," Thaddeus assured her, his hand swiftly wrapping each piece in the set with two smooth motions. "This set may well outlive us all." He produced an attractive gift box from behind the counter and carefully nestled each piece inside. They rang us up on the register. As promised by the tag, the cost was only $25. I was astonished. I still had been expecting there to be some mistake, but if Thaddeus was happy with the price he was getting, I certainly wasn't going to convince him to charge my grandmother more. I'm bringing this out for the book club," Grandma announced on the ride home. The box was still snugly in her lap, her arms wrapped protectively around it. I'd offered to put it in the trunk, but she insisted that it might slide around, and it would be safer with her. "They're going to be so jealous." "So Doris was right about zealots?" I asked. Grandma snorted. All she got was that doll for her granddaughter. She'll be kicking herself once she sees this. Serves her right for not looking around carefully enough. "It's a really big store, Grandma. Maybe she just picked the wrong side." "Her loss." Grandma sounded smug, almost gleeful. She's still going to get use of it in the book club, right? Yes, absolutely, but I'll own it. Internally I shrugged. I knew the politics ran deep in that community, and I mainly just stay out of it. This was clearly some game of one-upism that I have never before wandered into. If Grandma was happy, I was happy. That was the last time I ever saw my grandma. I spoke to her that Monday night, the night of the book club. She called me to talk afterwards, as she often did, and had opinions that differed from the others in the club. So, how's the book club, Grandma? I asked. Oh, the tea set was such a hit, she told me, practically crowing. Everyone loved it. Okay, but the book. And Doris was so mad. Did you get that at Zealot's? Where is it? I didn't see it. So the tea set, huh? I think I even made the tea taste bitter. I swear I hadn't had tea so flavorful in years. It's a ritual to it all. It really adds to it. I'm glad you're happy, Grandma. Can we go back this Sunday? I can take Doris this time. I'll give her a chance to find something. She'll go into the complete sulk otherwise. Absolutely, Grandma. Let me know if anyone else wants to go, and I'll bring the SUV. Don't be ridiculous. None of us can climb into that thing. I'll just bring me and Doris. Everyone else can find their own way there. Next Sunday morning, though, I called like usual. The routine started off the same as always. Oh, how nice to hear from you. No, I don't really need anything. The usual routine. But she never got the well if you're going anyway part. And after a couple minutes, I just flat out said, Grandma, I'm going to the grocery store. Do you want to come along? No, she told me. I'm just going to stay home today, I think. What about going to Zealot's? I thought you and Doris wanted to go back. I don't think I'm going out today. I'm just going to stay here. Are you feeling well? Oh yes, I feel fine. I just don't trust some of the people around here. Okay, well, do you need me to bring you anything? Well, if you're going anyway. The trip to the store later, I was toting 2 full grocery bags down the hall to Grandma's apartment. The door was ajar, so I nudged it open to my foot. I called out, but my voice died in my throat. Grandma was laying on her back in the middle of her room. Her arms held feebly above her. Blood was spurting out from her forearms and her chest. A lurid red ran across the right rug. Straddling her, striking viciously down with a kitchen knife, was Doris. She was coated in blood and screaming incoherently. The knife seeming to flash outward with a mind of its own. Stop! I shrieked. Groceries spilled to the floor. I raced into the apartment and hurled Doris aside. Her head impacted the TV and she crumpled into the ground, but I wasn't paying her any attention. My eyes were on my grandmother, her hands wrapped desperately around her forearms. I pressed them to her chest and I attempted to stop the bleeding. Don't, she coughed, whispering out the word. I'm sorry, Grandma. I know it hurts. I'm sorry. I have to help. She shook her head weakly. Don't, she coughed again. Don't what? Don't let her have the tea set. Those were her final words to me. The staff came thundering down the hall. Practiced hands pulling me away, applying bandages, calling 911. It was too late though. Too late for my grandmother, and too late for Doris, who had died in the corner while my grandmother choked on her final words. I sat on the couch, bloodied and soaked, while the paramedics came, while curious heads poked their heads around the door frame, while the police arrived and cordoned off the scene. I told them that I had no idea why Doris did it. I told them that they had been friends, that it didn't make any sense. I didn't mention the tea set because it was just stupid. It was just a stupid tea set. She might have been obsessed with it, but that obviously wasn't what it was all about. So I believed, anyway. But we had the estate sale last weekend. All my grandmother's jewelry and clothes and belongings out for the world to pick. I went by at one point to see how it was going, and the numbers of the folks from our retirement community were there. They were polite. They all greeted me and expressed condolences and all the usual society niceties. But every single one of them had the same question for me. Where is the tea set? They wouldn't accept, I don't know, as an answer either. Further questions followed. Did your parents take it? Do you have it? Did she give it to someone already? Who has it? The look in their eyes was desperate, vicious. I made my excuses and left before it got any worse. I don't know who has the tea set. My parents don't. They never even knew about it. I assumed that someone in my grandmother's building took it, except that all the people she associated with were at the estate sale, looking for it. The day she was murdered, when I showed up in her apartment, the tea set was on the table. I remember it. I remember seeing it. The image of her murder is fixed clearly in my mind, like a painting. And just past her flailing arms, to the left of Doris's upraised knife, the tea set was plainly there on the table. But when I left the apartment, when I stood up from the couch where I had been sitting there for hours, I had a brief moment of dizziness. I steadied myself on the table for a second until it passed. I put the palm flat on the table. I caught a glimpse. The empty table? There was no tea set. The whole episode is a blur. I remember the opening image distinctly, and then it's just blood and flashing lights and endless parade of faces. So many people came in and out of view while I sat on the couch and stared and cried. And in there, in the middle of it all, was there one person who moved smoothly through the crowd, too smoothly, who glided in as if it belonged there and removed the tea set. There were so many faces, so many blurs, I can't recall. Zealots doesn't show up in the web search. The warehouse downtown is vacant. Doris and my grandmother are there, dead. And I don't think I'll ever know the truth. And that is the ending of My Grandmother Was Killed Over a Tea Set. Oh, I'm glad you are enjoying this Amberger and Stark King. And I believe that is all the stories we have tonight. I thank you all for showing up for this fabulously creepy storytelling. And I hope to see you all next week. But before I go, I would like to read a quote I got on my Discord channel. If you would like to have a quote read on this stream, be sure to join Discord and add your own quotes into the creepy story section. This comes from Cranky Pants. Sleep did not come to me easily that night in the cabin in the woods, for the portraits on the walls only portrayed the deformed, the decrepit, the damned. Sleep has never come easily to me ever again, for when I had woke up, I found no portraits, only windows. And that is our creepy quote of the week. Again, if you like your creepy quote read, join Discord, leave a comment in the channel, and maybe, just maybe, yours will be picked. Till then, I will see you all next week for another fabulously creepy stories. Be sure to join in tomorrow where Choppy will be back playing Space Marines with his fabulous video game streams. Good night.